thought I was different and broken and all of these things. And then you get thrust into an environment that's like, just pray it away. And it's like, well, that doesn't work at all. No. And so coming into my teen years, I was definitely, how do I put this? Like, I was a mess of a kid. You know, I was doing, I was acting out extremely, you know, doing any drugs that I could possibly do, was a highly sexually active, very young. And then lo and behold, I had to the court put me back with that family member who was my dad. So unfortunately, the person who abused me did not go to jail because this was 1991, 1992, 93, 94. Mm-hmm. Sexual abuse and abuse in general was not as talked about. My mom was not believed. My dad said he didn't want rights to me, left, so on and so forth. Lo and behold, I end up back in his custody at 13. And at that point, he was a very, I experienced a lot of emotional and physical abuse in that home. My dad was extremely bipolar, very violent. Like, you never knew what you were coming down to. Like, if I was coming downstairs, I'm like, is it going to be a good day or a bad day? Like, I don't know. I don't know what's about to happen in this house. Mm-hmm. Lots of anger, lots of, also that household was very loose. There was a lot of partying and drinking. I was doing drugs at like 13.
With the adults.
With adults, yeah. And so with adults, didn't really go to school, was drinking heavily. And then we had a lot of men living in our home. My dad's employees, he owned a landscape lighting company, and they lived in our home. And we had this like weird, like, I can laugh at it now, but it was just like this weird, there was no rules, there was no boundaries. The way we managed conflict was like getting drunk and like getting in a fist fight. Like, we did, like, it was definitely not normal, but you have to realize as well, it was my normal.
Right.
So I didn't know that any of this stuff wasn't normal. And then unfortunately there was a lot of abuse in that home by those men. And so it was a repeated pattern. And, eventually it became too much to take. And at about 15, 16, I left. And I started living with, friends, boyfriends, anyone. Like, I was just living on people's couches and here to there. And again, I was just partying, drinking heavily, wasn't going to school. When I was in school, I definitely couldn't pay attention. That was like a theme my whole life. I just thought I was stupid because I really couldn't focus. I was behind. I didn't test well. And I always just chopped it up to me being stupid, and I'm just a party girl and all of these stories.
Well, and then it becomes a stacking effect, right? So, like, the further you fall behind, the harder it is to keep up, and then the more you have to drink and do drugs to cover it up or distract yourself with artificial relationships, and so it spirals, right? Yeah, it snowballs.
Totally snowballed. And so then I ended up very young. I needed to make money and survive. And so I started working as a dancer and getting into the sex work industry, which is another very vile industry that, perpetuates a lot of abuse and a lot of drug abuse. And so I didn't have a foundation to stand on, and I was just kind of like falling into falling wherever I could. And I was very depressed. I was very anxiety ridden. I was paranoid. I remember I can look back, like, I would create stories in my head that I really believed that definitely were not true. I was very not okay. And I finally hit a point in that time in my life where I was dancing to make money. I was partying all the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I was sad and hurt, and I just was like, I have to do something. And so the first thing that I did was I started to try and get into fitness. I was like, okay, you think, okay, you need to get healthy, because I was like gaining weight, and I was like, oh, I'm anxiety. I didn't put the two together, really, mental health, but the first thing you do is like work out. I'm going to work out. And so
it's good though. That's a good adaptive skill. Yeah. We encourage people to exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. So it's like, so I'm like, okay, let me give it a go. And I remember like trying yoga, and I was like, nope. Like, and spinning, I was just like, oh, this is so whack, like, I'm not, like, I just wasn't into any of that. And then what actually finally moved me was getting into heavy lifting. Like I went to this bare bones barbell gym. It was kind of like what CrossFit was before CrossFit was CrossFit. You know, it was like more just like powerlifting and kettlebell stuff. And I remember going into that workout and it was an ass kicker. And I like really loved that. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. You know, it was almost like, you know, masochistic. Like I think looking back and like I liked the like pain. But then I ended up sticking with it and something drew me to it. And I remember I had coaches there that would be like, where were you last week? You know, they would actually like check in on me.
Like, this is different.
I hadn't really had. And then being able to have someone teach me something or encourage me, like, no, put more weight on the bar. You can do that. And these little things that I really just didn't have a massive team of constantly in my upbringing. No consistency like that. Really, like, I had never had that. People looking out for me. And then I was like lifting weight that I had never lifted, and it made me feel powerful and it made me feel strong, which is something that I also didn't realize that I've never really felt. And so that was the first turning point for me. I completely thrust myself into that life because my anxiety simultaneously, like I'm healing and embodying my body, simultaneously my anxiety goes down. My stress goes down. I'm wanting to eat better, which then makes my brain function better and all of these things. And I say all of this looking back on it with perspective, but you have to realize when I'm in all of this, I'm not that in tune. I'm just like, I like this. I feel good, you know, and I'm not that clicked in with it. I think that's really important for people to know that might be still in the middle of it. Like I wasn't that aware then. But regardless, it helped change my life. And I was like, oh, I want to be a coach and I want to do this and I want to change other people's lives. And this is what I want to do with my life. I finally know, you know, like I don't want to be a dancer. I want to do something better. Yeah. And then I started to go, I went to school, you know, I did all the things, studied under people, threw myself into it, made it happen, right? Flash forward, I still am struggling. Don't get me wrong. I would go on like benders and go on a binge drinking weekend every now and again. And I then realized that like all this drug abuse and sex and all of these things I was doing to avoid my pain then kind of clicked over into a different endorphin release, which I didn't know at the time, but I was exercising excessively. I was working out 2 to 3 times a day. I was in the gym all the time. I was becoming a better coach, you know, and flash forward, I become a Nike trainer, a Nike master trainer, and I'm at Nike HQ, and, you know, life is quote unquote good, but I'm just like obsessed with working out and doing all these things. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I had another low point. I went through a breakup with someone I was dating that, the relationship was really toxic. I still was having really toxic relationships and struggled in that department. And that breakup triggered something in me. And I remember even in my life now, I started like getting back into old habits. Like I was like drinking in the middle of the day out of nowhere, started smoking cigarettes out of nowhere. I would be out to lunch with a friend and I would feel like I was just watching myself go through the motions. Like I just like felt like I wasn't there. I would be with clients and I'm like, I'm just watching the session go by. Like I literally felt like I was outside of my body.
Let me jump in real quick and point something out to the listening audience. If you're listening to this and you're like, wow, that's me. There's hope, right? So, I mean, at the end of this tale, obviously, we already know the outcome, which is Jessika succeeds and does well. But we have, I mean, I could speak from my own life where I've had those moments, and I think I look around now and I got a family and I'm pretty successful. But yeah, so these patterns you build up over time, they don't go away right away. I mean, you didn't get here overnight, so it's going to take a little while to get undone. Now, the good news is you didn't have to go, 30 years the other direction to, right? Because the more insight you have, the more it accelerates and healing happens faster. So have hope, people. If you're hearing this and you're like, holy cow, that's me, dude, don't lose faith. Like,
don't say, it's going to be okay. And that's so huge because that's exactly where I was like, I'm going to lose everything I've worked so hard for. Like, I've worked so hard to be here. And like, I knew, that I had emotional trauma and pain, but like looking back on those experiences where I sat then, I didn't know that all the stuff that went on in my dad's house wasn't okay. I really only knew that, like, the stuff that happened to me as a child wasn't okay, right? Like, I really didn't.
Right.
I didn't click in. I never told anyone. It wasn't a thing. Like, I kept it all very secret. And, but I finally just hit that point where I was like, if I don't fucking face these issues and this pain, it's going to swallow me up. And I'm not going to be able to pay rent and things. And that is, so coming back to my way original point of being scared to walk into a therapist's office, it was one, I didn't like therapy, I think because I had gone as a kid and it had a lot of like religious undertones in that household as well. I had always never been a fan of therapy. I'm always like, no, I'm not doing therapy. Fuck therapy. Like, if you would have met me, 10 years ago, like, no way, not even 8 years ago, no way. And I finally just surrendered to the fact that, like, if I want to keep my life and I don't want to be, I was suicidal, all the things, that I need to get help. And so I went and looked. I luckily had someone in my life who was a big help, and was like, you need a trauma-specific therapist. I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And, I found a list of therapists, and what's wild is actually the first, and might help some people that maybe have this experience. It took a lot of courage for me to even set up the appointment. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of fear behind that. I mean, even making the call.
Oh, yeah.
I was like terrified. It was so scary, and I just didn't want to. Everything in my body was like, oh, fuck. And I finally did, and I set up a couple. Someone had advised me, hey, you don't have to just go with the first one you meet. You want to make sure you like you like them and feel safe and all of these things. And so the first office I went in, bless her, I don't think this was her fault. I think it was definitely just like the whole experience. I remember I was terrified. I was late getting there, I think on purpose. I was like, it took everything for me to go.
That is not unusual, by the way. That kind of avoidance is very, very typical.
It's very terrifying. And I remember sitting in her office, and I was so closed off to this woman. It was like a 30-minute consultation, and I was just like, I feel so uncomfortable and sticky, and I hate it. And I had a panic. Like, I left, had a panic attack, got wasted, and like went home. Like, I really did not react well. I was like crying. I just like hated it. And I didn't even talk about anything, But then it was like, okay, I tried that. That didn't work. Let's go to the next one. And okay. And then it became a little easier. And the person I ended up working with, and the reason I did, was she had a very emotional, safe. She took a very frou-frou approach as well as a science approach. And that worked for me because I needed to feel comforted and okay. But I remember walking into her office, telling her why I was there and how I felt. And she goes, I just want you to, she's like, I have a little blurb and I want you to read it. And you can tell me if this is you. And if it's not, also okay. Just let me know if this sounds like you. Mm-hmm. And it was the definition of PTSD, like symptoms of PTSD. And it was just like a couple pages. And and it didn't say that on the page. It just gave the definition. And I was like, yeah. And I think that was huge. Like it was, some of the symptoms that I read was like agitation, irritability and hostility, insomnia or nightmares, self-destructive behavior, for sure, social isolation, anxiety, paranoia, mistrust, emotional detachment, unwanted thoughts. I'm like,
check.
Check, all of it, and she's like, I think you're in a PTSD trigger right now. I'm like, what is she talking about? I was like, I looked at her like, excuse me, and coming back to what I was saying about being like PTSD, me, I'm not a war vet. I'm not, what are you talking about? Like, I was so weirded out, but then, breaking down, what PTSD is, if you think about it, right? Now that I've thrown myself into researching this topic, PTSD by definition is a psychiatric or mental disorder that can develop in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event and have trouble recovering. Now, trauma, by definition, is a deeply disturbing or distressing experience. Mm-hmm. If we just say, like, most people have had some kind of deeply disturbing or distressing experience.
Right.
Like, if we look at that, okay, so then it's kind of like more common than we think. And that's where when I got into more of that, like, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, emotional neglect, substance abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, like all of these things. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I have experienced these things, and they did